Ted Cruz leaned back in his chair with that slow, confident grin he saved for moments when he thinks he has total control. The room was already tense, but Way let out a small laugh, sharp, dismissive, almost rehearsed. You could feel the air shift. His smirk wasn't just a facial expression. It was a message, a warning shot, a signal that he believed Jasmine Crockett didn't belong on the same stage as him. People in the room glanced around, unsure if they just witnessed a joke or an insult. Cameras zoomed in. Pens froze in midair. Even the quiet hum of the room seemed to pause. And right at the center of it all sat Jasmine Crockett. Still, steady, watching with eyes that did not flinch. She didn't fire back. She didn't move. She didn't even blink. She let the moment hang, like a storm cloud waiting for the right second to burst. Cruz wasn't done. He shook his head like he was brushing away something silly, something beneath him. He chuckled again, louder this time. A laugh meant to bully. A laugh meant to remind everyone who he thought was a superior voice at the table. The smirk widened, stretching into the kind of smile that said he believed he had already won the exchange before it even started. And still, Jasmine stayed silent. That silence was louder than any shout, louder than any argument. You could almost hear a heartbeat echoing through the room, faster and faster, as if the walls themselves were waiting for her answer. Every camera focused on her face, expecting anger, frustration, or even fear. But instead, her expression stayed calm, sharp, and unshaken. She saw everything, heard everything, and stored it. Cruz leaned forward, as if he wanted the moment recorded in history. Him laughing, her still. He believed it showed dominance. But the people watching, both in the room and online, felt something different. They felt the heat rising. They felt the disrespect. They felt the beginning of a showdown he clearly underestimated. Somewhere in that quiet space between his laughter and her steady gaze, the power shifted. Not enough for him to notice yet, but enough for anyone paying attention to sense what was coming. Because if Ted Cruz thought this moment would end in laughter, he had no idea what was coming next. The room hadn't planned for drama that day. It was supposed to be another long, careful hearing about government oversight, one of those sessions where leaders talk about fairness, truth, and accountability. But underneath all the paperwork and speeches, something much bigger was at stake. People were tired of politicians who talked over others, twisted facts, and treated public service like a stage. They wanted honesty. They wanted leaders who listened. And most of all, they wanted dignity. That's why this moment mattered. Not because of one joke or one laugh, but because of what that laugh represented. When Ted Cruz smirked at Jasmine Crockett, it wasn't just a reaction to a comment. It carried an old message many Americans knew too well. Power mocking truth, entitlement mocking service, ego mocking dignity. It was the kind of moment immigrants, working families, and anyone who's ever been underestimated could feel in their bones. The hearing was supposed to explore real issues, things that shape people's lives in quiet but serious ways. But suddenly, the whole room was focused on a different question. Who gets to speak with respect, and who gets brushed off like they don't matter? Cruz's laugh didn't just interrupt the flow. It cracked open a truth about how some leaders treat others when they think no one is watching. But people were watching. Staffers exchanged glances. Reporters typed faster. Some leaned forward, sensing the start of the story. A few in the audience shifted in their seats, uncomfortable with how quickly the tone had changed. It wasn't fear, it was recognition. They had seen moments like this in classrooms, workplaces, courtrooms, and offices across the country. Moments where someone's pride became a weapon. Online, chatter began almost instantly. A clip of Cruz's smirk circulated within minutes. Comments started rolling in. Why is he laughing like that? She hasn't even spoken yet. This is disrespectful. People felt protective of Jasmine Crockett even before she said a word. They knew her. They trusted her. They saw her as someone who spoke for them, someone who stood firm when others tried to push her aside. Seeing her treated with casual disrespect hit a nerve that stretched far beyond politics. And there was another layer, representation. For so many viewers, Jasmine wasn't just another lawmaker. She stood for identity, heritage, and all the dreams carried into this country by people who worked twice as hard for half the credit. To see her laugh that so openly felt personal. It wasn't just a hearing anymore, it was a test. Would dignity be swallowed by arrogance? Would facts be drowned out by ego? Would yet another powerful man get away with belittling someone who refused to play small? The stakes weren't written on paper, but they were written on people's faces. This was about more than policy. It was about who gets treated as equal in a room built to serve everyone. And in that moment, Ted Cruz made it clear he believed he held the upper hand. His smirk told the story he wanted the world to see. A seasoned senator brushing off a woman he expected to overpower. But the world was about to see a very different story. And to understand why his smirk would become a national meme, you have to see who Ted Cruz really was in this moment. To understand the weight of that smirk, you have to understand the man behind it. Ted Cruz didn't build his public persona on quiet listening or humble reflection. He built it on debate stages, cable news, sparring matches, sharp-tongued speeches, and moments where he could turn conflict into a performance. For years, he earned a reputation for speaking with confidence that often crossed into condescension. He didn't just argue a point, he performed it. He spoke as if the louder or sharper he sounded, the more right he must be. People had seen this pattern before. When Cruz disagreed with someone, he didn't simply push back. He framed them as uninformed or unprepared. He used long monologues filled with big words, fired off questions meant to corner his opponent, and added a dry smile at the end, as if he had just taught them a lesson. Many viewers felt he used these tactics not to find truth, but to win the moment. Over time, that approach made some people see him less as a leader and more as a showman. This wasn't about cartoon-level villainy. It was about habit, years of leaning into arrogance because it worked for him in certain rooms. Moments where he dismissed people became part of his political brand. Clips of him interrupting, talking over others, or showing impatience spread online again and again. Some supporters praised his confidence. Others called it disrespect disguised as strength. But either way, it became expected. When Cruz sat down for a hearing, people braced themselves for sarcasm, long speeches, and a smirk that said he believed he held the upper hand. There were times when this confidence cost him, debates where he underestimated opponents and found himself pushed back harder than he expected, interviews where he tried to joke his way through tough questions and ended up trending for all the wrong reasons. Public moments where the gap between who he thought he was and how the country saw him became painfully clear. But instead of adjusting, he often doubled down. He treated politics like a competition, not a conversation. He carried that same energy into this hearing. The moment he saw Jasmine Crockett, the script in his mind seemed simple. Brush her off, downplay her points, stay in control, get the last word. The smirk wasn't just about the moment. It was a reflection of years spent believing that performance mattered more than substance, that confidence mattered more than respect. People who had followed his career understood the pattern. Whenever he felt challenged, the dismissiveness came out. When he felt questioned, the sarcasm surfaced. And when he felt threatened, whether by facts, strong voices, or powerful truth, the smirk appeared, almost like a shield. But something was different this time. The country was changing. People were paying closer attention to tone, treatment, and power imbalance. They were tired of leaders who acted untouchable. They were tired of mockery being used to silence anyone who didn't fit a certain mold. And in Jasmine Crockett, they saw someone who wasn't there to play games. Someone who knew exactly what that smirk meant, yet refused to react on his terms. This clash wasn't just about politics. It was about identity, dignity, and the kind of leadership people wanted to support. Cruz walked into the room, thinking he would control the narrative. He thought a laugh and a few cutting remarks would set the tone. But he missed something important. He underestimated the power of calm confidence. He misread the energy of a country hungry for respect. And most of all, he misjudged Jasmine Crockett. He believed he was stepping into another easy exchange, another moment to show dominance, another day where performance would be enough. But the tension in the room, the growing online buzz, and the steady focus of every viewer hinted at something else, a turning point he didn't see coming. Because on this day, he wasn't facing someone who played by a script. Before Jasmine Crockett ever sat across from Ted Cruz, she had already lived through battles far harder than any hearing room could offer. Her strength wasn't something she learned from political training or fancy workshops. It was built in real places with real people through real struggles. She grew up watching how systems treated those who didn't have money, connections, or powerful last names. She saw how truth could be ignored if it came from someone who didn't fit the image of who the world wanted to listen to. And instead of turning away from those problems, she stepped straight into them. Long before she ever made headlines, Jasmine worked as a lawyer defending people who didn't have the luxury of choosing who stood up for them. Many of her clients were poor. Many were scared. Many felt invisible. She walked into courtrooms where no one expected her to win. She faced prosecutors who tried to talk over her, judges who doubted her, and opponents who assumed she didn't understand the law as well as they did. They were wrong every time. She didn't raise her voice or lose her cool. She argued with precision, patience, and a level of focus that only comes from knowing you are fighting for someone who is no one else. Her activism grew from those moments. Every case she took, every person she defended, added another layer to her purpose. She learned how to stay steady even when everyone around her tried to shake her confidence. She learned how to stand tall even when she was the only one speaking for the unheard. And she learned something even more powerful. Silence can be a weapon when used at the right time. She didn't need to match anyone's arrogance. She didn't need to match their volume. Her strength came from truth, lived experience, and a sense of duty that couldn't be performed like a political act. By the time she entered public office, she had already mastered the art of facing people who tried to underestimate her. Every dismissive look reminded her of someone she once defended. Every raised eyebrow reminded her of a courtroom where she wasn't expected to win, but did anyway. And every smirk from someone who thought they were smarter or stronger only fueled her resolve. She carried these memories like armor. When she spoke about justice, it wasn't theory, it was memory. When she pushed for fairness, it wasn't strategy, it was survival. She wasn't interested in performing for cameras. She didn't show up to hearings to compete for attention. She came to represent real people, immigrants, workers, families, young people finding their voice, and anyone who felt dismissed by leaders who valued ego more than service. That's why Jasmine's calm under pressure was so different from the polished calm many politicians try to display. Hers wasn't an act. It was a result of years spent fighting in rooms where losing meant someone else's life could fall apart. She learned to breathe through anger. She learned to listen through noise. She learned to stand firm even when others tried to corner her. This wasn't her first time facing someone who tried to silence her, and it wouldn't be her last. But most importantly, she carried the weight of generations. She stood not just as one woman in a hearing, but as a reflection of every person who had ever been laughed at, brushed aside, or told they didn't belong. She felt the stories of her ancestors in her bones. People who fought without microphones, without cameras, without national attention. People who survived disrespect far more dangerous than a politician's smirk. When Cruz laughed, she heard echoes of those who kept their dignity even when the world denied it to them. So when she sat still in that moment, it wasn't because she was unsure of what to say. It was because she understood the value of patience. Her silence wasn't submission. It was calculation. It was respect for herself. It was a message that she didn't need to react to the performance. She would choose her moment. And when she spoke, she would do it with the force of someone who had spent her entire life preparing for moments exactly like this. People watching felt that energy even if they couldn't explain it. They sensed that Jasmine wasn't just another lawmaker trying to win a point. She was someone who represented them. Someone who carried the pride of identity, culture, community, and hard-won progress. She stood for families who worked too many jobs. She stood for people who crossed borders with hope in their hands. She stood for young girls who saw in her a future they never thought possible. And she stood for every person who had ever been belittled by someone in power. Her calm wasn't weakness. It was history. It was purpose. It was strength shaped by years of standing in front of people who doubted her and proving them wrong again and again. And that's precisely why the next moment hit harder than anyone expected. The silence after Cruz's smirk didn't last long. He cleared his throat, leaned into the microphone, and began speaking in a tone that carried the same energy as a smile. Sharp, mocking, dripping with confidence he didn't bother hiding. His words came out slow at first, almost playful, like he wanted everyone to hear how relaxed he was. But beneath the calm, his voice carried an edge. He spoke as if he was lecturing, not debating. As if Jasmine should be grateful. He even bothered to respond. He tossed out a question, then answered it himself before she could speak. He twisted a small point into a long speech, filling the air with so much noise it was hard for anyone else to jump in. Every time Jasmine opened her mouth to reply, he cut her off with a raised hand or a quick, "Let me finish," even though he had already taken more time than anyone else. The interruptions weren't random. They were controlled tactics, the same ones he had used in debates for years. He acted as though the hearing was a stage, and he was determined to keep the spotlight. Jasmine didn't interrupt. She didn't roll her eyes or shift in her seat. Instead, she inhaled slowly, letting the breath settle in her chest before releasing it. Her shoulders stayed relaxed. Her hands stayed still. But her eyes told another story. They narrowed just a little, focused on Cruz with a calm intensity that made it clear she was listening to every single word. Not shaken, not impressed, just ready. People in the room noticed. The staffers who had been typing paused to watch. A few heads lifted from notes, sensing the tension rising like heat from a fire. Reporters leaned closer. The whole room felt as if it had been pulled into a tighter space, with Cruz's voice bouncing against the walls and Jasmine's silence cutting through the noise. Cruz continued, growing bolder each time Jasmine didn't react. Sarcasm slipped into his sentences. He chuckled at his own comments, shaking his head as if he couldn't believe she dared to oppose him. He leaned back again, acting relaxed, but his eyes flicked toward the cameras every few seconds. He wasn't just debating, he was performing, and he believed the audience would side with the louder voice. But the louder he grew, the more obvious the shift became. His tone sharpened. His words sped up. The confidence in his smirk began to look like something else, something closer to frustration. Jasmine's stillness worked on him in a way he didn't expect. She wasn't flustered. She wasn't scrambling. She wasn't reacting at all. It threw off the rhythm he relied on. Jasmine kept her breathing steady. Every time Cruz tried to corner her, she sat a little straighter. Every time he talked over her, her eyes focused more sharply. A small tilt of her head, a slight tightening of her jaw. Nothing dramatic, but powerful enough that anyone paying attention knew she was waiting for the perfect moment, not just to respond, but to strike back with precision. The tension spread through the room like a slow wave. Even those who supported Cruz felt a strange discomfort, sensing that he was pushing too far. His voice echoed with sarcasm, but the energy wasn't landing the way he expected. Meanwhile, Jasmine's presence grew stronger in the silence. Her calm was no longer just patience. It was pressure. It made Cruz look louder, harsher, and less in control. Everyone felt the storm building. You could almost hear the suspense humming in the air, the way a sky feels right before thunder cracks open. Cruz kept talking, but his words no longer felt like dominance. They felt like desperation to hold on to the moment. The more he spoke, the more it became clear he was talking himself into a corner, unaware he was losing the room one breath at a time. Then it happened, a slight shift, small enough to miss, powerful enough to change everything. Jasmine leaned forward, and everything changed. Jasmine leaned forward with calm that cut through the noise like a blade. The room felt so quiet it felt unreal, as if someone had pressed pause on the world. Even Cruz, who had been talking nonstop only seconds earlier, froze for a moment. His smile thinned, his eyes narrowed, waiting for her to stumble, to defend herself, to match his anger. But Jasmine didn't stumble. She didn't defend. She didn't meet his anger. She met the moment with something far more dangerous to a man who relied on noise, silence that carried purpose. She looked straight at him, and when she finally spoke, her voice was low, steady, and sharp enough to break his entire performance apart. She began with one fact. Simple, clear, unshakable. A fact about the very issue Cruz had twisted into a show. The words hit harder than anyone expected because she didn't raise her voice to deliver them. She didn't need volume. The truth carried its own weight. Cruz blinked. Just once, surprised that she had cut straight to the point he had tried to bury under sarcasm. Before he could interrupt, she dropped the second fact, then the third, each one layered on top of the last, forming a chain he could not break. It was like watching a sculptor chip away at stone, revealing the truth beneath every blow. As she spoke, Cruz shifted in his chair. His smirk twitched, the edges trembling as if unsure whether to hold its shape or fall apart. He tried to interject, but Jasmine didn't stop. She flowed around his interruptions with ease, weaving her words so tightly together that he had no space to squeeze back in. Her timing was perfect. Every sentence she spoke carried the weight of lived experience. Every point came with clarity that didn't need decoration, and every fact she delivered made Cruz shrink a little more in his seat. For the first time, the cameras turned away from him. They focused on her, on the certainty in her voice, on the calm in her eyes, on the way she held the room without raising her volume. Commentators watching live later said they felt the shift instantly. It wasn't debate anymore. It was a dismantling. Not loud, not messy, not chaotic. Precise, controlled, devastating. Like someone shining a bright light into a space where shadows once hid. Cruz's face began to break in real time. His eyebrows lifted, then tightened. His jaw clenched. His eyes flicked down to his notes, searching for a line strong enough to recover his balance. But nothing he had prepared matched the force of the truth she was laying out. He swallowed hard, the movement visible even on camera. The smirk that once looked confident now seemed like a mask slipping out of place. Every time she made a point he couldn't challenge, another crack formed in that mask. Jasmine didn't rush. She didn't gloat. She didn't feed on his discomfort. She stayed centered, as if each fact was simply part of her duty, not a weapon. But to everyone watching, it was clear she was taking back the room piece by piece. The staffers who had paused earlier were now leaning forward, their eyes wide. Reporters typed with a speed that matched their shock. Some tried to hide their reactions, but the quiet gasps and raised eyebrows gave them away. And it wasn't just the people in the room. As the moment streamed online, viewers filled comment sections with disbelief. Clips of the exchange spread across platforms within minutes. She cooked him. He wasn't ready. This is what strength looks like. The more she spoke, the faster the reactions exploded. People clipped each fact she delivered and posted them as short videos, calling one of the cleanest takedowns they had ever seen. Cruz attempted one last interruption, lifting his hand as he leaned toward the microphone. But before he could speak, Jasmine delivered the fact that shut down his entire argument. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was simply right. So right, in fact, that the room reacted before Cruz did. A wave of murmur spread through the audience, followed by stunned silence. His eyes widened just slightly, his lips tightening as he struggled to hide the shock. His smirk, once a symbol of control, faded entirely. Jasmine paused after that final point, letting the silence settle again. She didn't need to continue. She had stripped the performance away, leaving only truth standing. Cruz leaned back, this time without the confidence he had carried earlier. He forced a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. It looked like something he put on, because he couldn't think of anything else to do. Even the cameras caught the tension in his jaw, the twitch beneath his eye, the way his fingers tapped nervously against the desk. The contrast was impossible to ignore. On one side, a woman shaped by real struggle, speaking with calm authority. On the other, a man undone by the truth he thought he could outtalk. Commentators watching from studios across the country called it a mic drop moment, a masterclass, a reset of the entire power dynamic. And still, Jasmine didn't boast. She returned to her composure, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Even though everyone else knew they had just witnessed a shift that would echo far beyond the room, people replayed this exchange again and again, studying every second of Cruz's unraveling and every word of Jasmine's rise. It was more than a response. It was a reminder of what happens when truth meets arrogance, a reminder of who carries real strength, a reminder that dignity, once tested, becomes even stronger. And yet the shockwaves were only beginning. The moment the exchange ended, the video clips began spreading across the internet like sparks in dry grass. People who'd been watching the hearing live clipped the mic drop moment and posted it within seconds. It didn't matter which platform they used. Every feed filled with the same scene. The smirk fading from Ted Cruz's face and the calm force in Jasmine Crockett's voice as she delivered truth he couldn't escape. What started as a small ripple turned into a wave before anyone in the room even stood up from their seats. Hashtags started trending almost instantly. People wrote captions like, "She ended him," "The smirk is gone," and "This is what leadership looks like." Some posts focused on the exact second Cruz's expression cracked. Others highlighted Jasmine's steady tone. Someone freeze-framed the moment he swallowed hard and zoomed in. That screenshot alone became a meme shared across millions of accounts. Teenagers on TikTok made dramatic recreations of the scene, slowing down her final line and pairing it with cinematic music. One clip of Jasmine's calm stare gained millions of views in a single night. Late-night hosts picked it up too. Monologues opened with jokes about Cruz searching for his missing confidence. They replayed the exchange in front of live studio audiences, pausing at each fact Jasmine delivered so the room could react. One host compared her performance to a lawyer dismantling a case with nothing but receipts and patience. Another described Cruz's reaction as a man realizing the internet is about to have a very long evening at his expense. The crowds laughed, but beneath the laughter was admiration for clarity and strength Jasmine had shown. Political analysts weren't laughing. They were stunned. On panel shows, commentators who usually disagreed on everything found one point of unity. Jasmine outperformed every expectation. Analysts spoke about her command of the facts, her calm control, her timing. They said she had redefined the tone of the hearing. They admitted that this wasn't just a win. It was the kind of moment that shapes reputations. One analyst even said it felt like a shift in the balance of who the public trusted to speak with honesty and purpose. Even some supporters of Cruz spoke up quietly, though most avoided saying it publicly. In private group chats and comment threads, they admitted he looked unprepared, that he walked into the moment thinking he had already won, and that he didn't know how to recover once Jasmine started laying out the truth. A few said he shouldn't have laughed in the first place. Others said he underestimated her. None of them used the word defeated, but the message was clear. He hadn't expected her strength, and he never regained his footing. Meanwhile, Jasmine's supporters celebrated her with a sense of pride that felt bigger than politics. For many, she represented dignity under pressure. She represented steady strength. She represented the idea that someone who came from real struggles could stand in front of power and not bend. People made videos thanking her for carrying herself with grace. They said she reminded them of their mothers, their aunts, their neighbors, women who stayed calm even when the world tried to dismiss them. The takedown wasn't just impressive. It was emotional. As the clip continued to spread, something else happened. Teachers showed the moment in government classes. Activists shared it during community meetings. Young people studying law said they replayed her words to learn how to stay composed in heated situations. It became more than a viral clip. It became an example of how truth can stand stronger than ego, how calm can overpower noise, and how someone underestimated can rise in a way no one forgets. Cruz tried to reclaim control the next day with interviews and statements, but the impact had already settled. His explanation sounded defensive, rushed, and unfocused. Every time he tried to frame the moment differently, the internet responded by reposting the clip again. His words couldn't erase the image of the smirk fading from his face, and every attempt only made the video rise higher on trending lists. Jasmine didn't respond right away. She didn't post a victory message. She didn't go on talk shows. She didn't send out a celebratory statement. While the world was replaying her takedown again and again, she stayed quiet. Not the silence of someone unsure. The silence of someone who didn't need applause to know her worth. Her calm after the storm made people respect her even more. The hearing had ended, but the moment lived on. It grew beyond politics. It became a cultural spark, a symbol of standing strong when someone tries to belittle you, a story people told each other with pride. But Jasmine didn't celebrate. She did something far more powerful. When Jasmine finally spoke after the storm of viral attention, her message wasn't about victory. It wasn't about Cruz. It wasn't even about the exchange that had taken over the internet. She chose a higher lane, one that carried the weight of service rather than the thrill of headlines. She talked about dignity, how it matters even when others refuse to show it. She talked about truth, how it stands firm no matter how many people try to twist it. And she talked about representation, how people from every background deserve leaders who see them, hear them, and respect them. She said her goal in the hearing was never to embarrass anyone. It was to make sure the facts were clear and the people watching at home felt informed, not ignored. She didn't mention Ted Cruz by name. She didn't need to. Her calm tone made it obvious she wasn't interested in pettiness or showmanship. She cared about service, not performance. Jasmine explained that strength isn't measured by how loudly someone speaks, but by how grounded they stay when challenged. She said that too many times in politics, people get lost in drama and forget the communities they were elected to protect. She reminded the public that leadership is not a stage for ego. It is a responsibility, a promise, a commitment to those who trust you to speak on their behalf. People listened. They felt the difference. After days of jokes, memes, and trending hashtags, Jasmine brought the conversation back to what actually mattered. She reminded viewers that public service is not about crushing opponents. It is about lifting others. She said her composure in that moment came from everyone who believed in her, everyone who had fought for fairness before her, everyone who kept going even when the world tried to silence them. Her message reached far beyond the political world. It touched families, workers, immigrants, young students, and anyone who had ever held their head high in the face of disrespect. Her tone contrasted sharply with Cruz's theatrics, where he had leaned on sarcasm. She leaned on purpose, where he had performed for the cameras. She had spoken for the people. The contrast made her message even clearer. She didn't need to win a moment. She was focused on winning trust. And in doing so, she showed exactly why so many people felt represented by her strength. As her words spread, something shifted in the national conversation. People stopped talking only about the takedown and started talking about what it meant. They spoke about dignity as a form of power. They shared stories of moments when they stayed calm even when someone tried to belittle them. They said Jasmine's response reminded them that truth doesn't need to shout to be heard. It just needs someone brave enough to speak it. By rising above the noise, Jasmine transformed a political clash into a lesson, one that felt personal to millions of people. Her message reached beyond a hearing room and into living rooms, classrooms, community centers, and workplaces. It reminded people that respect is not something granted by those in power. It is carried by those who choose to stand firm, even when others try to break them down. And for many viewers, the moment wasn't just inspiring. It was clarifying. It showed the difference between those who treat politics like a game and those who treat it like a duty. It showed that courage doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks like calm, steady truth breaking through arrogance. And that's why this moment wasn't just a debate, it was a reminder. So when people look back at this moment, they won't remember it as just another political argument. They'll remember the smirk that faded, the truth that rose, and the dignity that refused to break. They'll remember how Jasmine Crockett stayed steady, while Ted Cruz unraveled in front of the country. They'll remember how calm strength outshined loud arrogance, and how one voice grounded in service stood taller than performance built on ego. This is why the title matters. It wasn't just that Cruz laughed. It was that his laugh couldn't survive the truth Jasmine carried into that room. Her facts didn't just wipe the smirk off his face. They revealed what real leadership looks like when the pressure hits. They showed that dignity is not weakness. It is power. And when someone uses that power with purpose, the whole country feels it. But moments like this are bigger than one hearing or one exchange. They remind us why representation matters. They remind us why voices like Jasmine's deserve space, respect, and support. And they remind us that every person watching has a role in shaping the conversations that define our future. This channel is more than headlines and dramatic clips. It's a space for community, a place where truth is defended, dignity is honored, and people come together to push back against arrogance and division. If you believe in voices like Jasmine's, if you believe in strength rooted in service, if you believe in standing tall even when others try to silence you, then you belong here. So subscribe, share this video, and stay connected. Add your voice to a movement built on truth and respect. Together, we rise higher.